We're in this sermon series, Can You See Him? And as we work through different things, and let's just shake it all off. There we go. Whew. Okay. It is one thing to hear the word. It's one thing to sit in church. It's one thing to sing songs. And it's another to be transformed. It's a completely another to become a disciple of Jesus Christ. You know, the Great Commission says, go forth and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And as leaders, we sit in the church, as leaders who used to sit way outside the doors of the church, I might add, and we see everybody come in, and everybody encounter, like, it's the same Jesus, right? God's the same today, yesterday, tomorrow, forever, right? Amen? Amen. Okay, good. But people have different responses. And so what is it that allows people to see Jesus in some spaces when other people don't? And how do people go from not seeing Jesus because of their religion or their self-preservation to seeing Jesus and allowing Jesus to transform their lives? And so we often say that your life is the greatest testimony that you can give. Let our lives be a living testimony, right? Like, we sing that, we say that. But it's our honor to have Susan and Guthrie up here today because their lives truly have been a living testimony. And so today we've just invited them up really to share their story and what were key moments and how did they really do it, because it's Jesus applied and transforming. And so, hi guys. Hi. If you are newer to Bridge Church, Susan and Guthrie have been here about 2.5 years, a little more than, and you're going to hear their story this morning. And so, Guthrie, what? So we saw you baptize somebody. We saw you as a disciple who has helped make a disciple, baptizing, going from being baptized a year ago to baptizing today. Is that how you came into Bridge?
Absolutely not.
Really? Remind us, how'd you come into Bridge, Guthrie?
You know, we came to Bridge at a really difficult time in our lives. You know, we were in the middle of, moving. I had just joined the military at that point, and our lives were kind of all over the place. But it wasn't even just the transition; it was all the different things that I was probably running from in my past that I never wanted to deal with. So we came to Bridge. We were passing by and saw the signs out front. We're like, hey, we'll give that place a go. But also with that, in full transparency, I came into Bridge that first morning to get some of the heat off of me because I was a little hungover from the night before.
A little hungover?
And I came with my wife. So that's how I came into Bridge. And now I'm baptizing folks in here. So it's like
Honey in the Rock, right?
It's kind of it's a wild story. So over to you.
Yeah, so it was hard. Things had been hard. He went to boot camp. I stayed at home and sold our house and packed up all our things and moved them. And we were in Florida, then we were in California, and it was hard. We had struggled through a lot together, with the alcoholism being one of the biggest things that we have walked through together. But when we got to Maryland, we had come through a really rough time. I mean, I recall being, at one point in California, sitting on the beach at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. I thought I was about to have a failed marriage. It was a hard time. And I sat on the beach that day and I cried and I just didn't know what to do. And I called my mom and I talked with my mom, and she encouraged me to pray. I was raised in church. I, did the things, and I would go to church on Mother's Day and Easter because, I was working, I was busy, I was growing up. And so I had never lost my faith in God, but I had, like many people do, kind of strayed, and I wasn't walking with him. And my mom just encouraged me to pray. And so I did. And God told me, keep going. Keep going. And so we did, and we got to Maryland, and, the first weekend we were here, we were living on base here in Indian Head, drove by and saw the marquee out here, the Bridge Church, and we had been wanting to go to find a church once we got settled. And I'm sure when I came into Bridge that morning, I was mad as a hornet. That's probably how I came in, so.
You hit it well.
Thanks.
So what was different? Because you guys, as you had joined the Navy and you guys had traveled, you had gone to a couple churches. Susan was in a Bible study here and there. Guthrie, what was different when you walked in the door?
Yeah, so as soon as I walked in the door, I felt immediately accepted. It was different because I've been in different churches in the past. I've gone through different places, and I just took up a spot in the back corner, and no one ever really interacted with me. No one ever, they were like, "Oh, that guy's a mess. We don't need to, interact with him." But I came in here with my life being a mess, and there was never one moment where someone was just like, people wanted to do life with me, and people genuinely cared about me and my well-being and just wanted to walk in with me. So that's what was different.
All right. How about you, Susan?
Yeah, like I'd said, Jen mentioned I had been going to Bible study. At the time, that before we left home, I was doing a Bible study every Tuesday evening with family and friends in a large group women's Bible study. And that was my church really at that time because I worked weekends, every weekend. But then when we were traveling, when we were in Florida, we went to a church a few times. But it was a big church, and we just, there was never any real roots or connection there. And then in California, that's just a whole different world. And so we were too scared to even walk into a church there, honestly. And so, yeah, when we came to, I don't even know necessarily, I can't put a finger on there wasn't just one thing, but I remember coming in, sitting through the service and knowing that even though this was the first church we had come to here, we had planned on trying this one out, finding some other churches in the area. And I knew sitting in service that morning that this is where we would be planting our roots. So, yeah.
So you guys jumped in pretty quick. Like they came to church on Sunday, and we were doing a huge outreach, free movie night for all the kids at the elementary school. We had 100. We were close to our max that night because there were kids everywhere. Friday night, kids everywhere. And there you guys showed up, popping popcorn, 5 days after they walked into the church for the first time. But you made some decisions, right? What are the things, you guys got in small group right away, couples group, you did a few other things, joined the walking group. What are some things that you gained from that in terms of relationship and?
Yeah, for me, it's, I can come in here and just sit here and listen to a sermon and, go on about my week afterwards and before and apply it one day. But the action step for me to really start the transformation, to really start the relationship with having a better relationship was being in small groups. It was being in a part of a team. It was someone pouring into me, and that's really one of the biggest action steps for me that I would say was just being involved. It's so much more than just coming on Sunday and that's it. It's Wednesday night, Friday night group, and it's what are we doing each week to be poured into with Jesus.
Yeah, and I think too, I was talking about that day when, I just really hit a low point when we were in California. And so for me, it was just like, I have to jump into this because by that point, I knew the only thing that was going to save my husband and my marriage was God. I knew. And whether it was to get heat off of himself or because he wanted to spend time with me and do what I was doing, whatever it was, if I jumped in, I knew that he would jump in. And we had just been longing for the home, the church, so we jumped in head first.
Yeah, you did. And then came a time where we offered something called FPU, Financial Peace University, right? And that was a little bit of a turning point for you guys in a couple ways, both in your marriage and for you personally. Why don't you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mentioned action steps, and this was a really, really big one for me. And I never even heard of FPU before we came here. I've heard of Dave Ramsey, and I was like, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm kidding.
He's a little obnoxious.
It's just, if you can get past some things, you'll be able to smooth right through FPU just fine. But that was the first time I've ever really applied, I guess you could say, biblical principles to our finances at all. Susan has always been a faithful tither, and I have not. I never understood it. I never was just like, why would we give money to a place that we never see our money afterwards? Or we are living paycheck to paycheck. Why are we giving so much money somewhere whenever that could be going towards debt? And that was really, really hard for me. And if I told you I got it overnight, I did not. But it was really good for us.
There were some arguments. And like I said, I was raised in the church, so I was raised with that, that's a discipline, that's what you do. And I had been doing it since I got a job when I was 16 years old. And sometimes, Guthrie would just bring it up and, question. And of course, immediately I would get defensive because, well, if you know me.
Get a little redheaded.
The redhead, yeah. And I remember one time specifically saying, and this was not the right response, so nobody have the same attitude with your spouse. But I remember telling him, it's not negotiable. You can do whatever you want to do with your paycheck, but my paycheck will be tithed on, and it is not negotiable. And that was a couple years before we came to Brit. So that's one of the things, the disciplines that we have, he has now implemented as like number one. And I forgot what I was going to say other than that, but yeah.
I think for people who haven't been through Financial Peace University, it is not a 10-week tithing lesson at all. As a matter of fact, tithing is a very, very tiny little part of it. But some other biblical principles that you applied, what are some of those things that you learned to do and actually learned there were scripture to apply to your life?
Oh, what does Dave say? That's the borrower is slave to the lender.
Yeah, the borrower is slave to the lender.
And
Do it in your Dave voice, though.
Maybe after church.
Okay.
But we were a few months back. We were on vacation, and we ended up getting a random refund check for something. And we were sitting there. I was just like, do we need to tithe this? Like, we've already paid taxes on it, and we've already tithed it originally. And she just looked at me and she said, "Who are you?" I was just like, that's not my money.
Yeah. And also in FPU, you know, we learned about a big part of it is generosity and applying that. And I mean, we really just have seen God work through that. We've paid off so much in debt, and we now live freely, you know, not being bound.
Yeah. So life
that.
before you guys, not following biblical financial principles. Life before for you guys, what did that look like before he went in the Navy? Like,
We worked all the time.
and you had the
He worked 6, sometimes 7. He worked all the time. 24, 48, 96-hour shifts. I worked all the time. I had my job but full-time in the ER. I was working 3-4 days a week. I had a part-time gig in a clinic. We had a beautiful home and the dream vehicles that we wanted, and we enjoyed none of it because we worked
all the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you guys have paid off a lot. Like, that's been transformational for you. While salaries have gone down, you guys have paid off, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you want to?
What? So, part of my journey here at Bridge was learning that my identity is in Christ. It's not in a career. So I got here, I had a change of career. I had went to, instead of doing emergency medicine, I went into hospice, and I loved my job, but it was just hard and just a lot of things. And I really struggled with, do I even want to be a nurse anymore? And God just really was working on me at the time. We did a series, as a matter of fact, that you preached at that time about how we identify. And for the better part of 2 years that we were here, I walked struggling, ready to leave that job, didn't care, you know, about even being a nurse anymore. And it just got to be so hard until I realized that that is my trade. That is not who I am.
That's right.
I am a child of God.
That's right.
And he has more planned for me. And in that, you know, eventually I was able to quit that job and have been blessed not to have to work myself to death the last several months. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And looking in from the outside, I think I want to share that, you know, it's one thing to, oh, she quit her job and she doesn't have to work. That must be really nice or really easy. They moved from a 3-bedroom, 2,000 square foot or more townhouse into a 600 square foot, 1-bedroom, barely more than an efficiency apartment. Gave up their yard. That was hard with the dogs, meant walking the dogs all the time. Gave up the space, but with the complete goal of getting out of debt, so that, I would say, so they could say yes to whatever God had for them. They would probably have worded that a little differently in the beginning, but like laser focused on, I'm not supposed to be in debt. I'm going to get out of debt because that will free me up for whatever's next. And they made sacrifice to do that. But catch that she said she's been living in freedom, and Guthrie would say the same thing. It's been more freedom to live in 600 square feet without debt and paying their debt off than it was to live in a big place that was nicer and fancier and be adding to debt. And so, yeah, God showed up.
100%.
And through that, even though I quit my job and have had odd jobs here and there where I brought in a little bit of cash, how much did we pay off?
No, was it 2 years? Well,
2 years, yeah. Because we did March 2020.
so 26 months, we paid off $89,000 in debt.
Yeah.
By the way, he was enlisted, okay? Newly enlisted. So just to give perspective on the finances coming in. So, yeah. Great job, guys. So that was one big step for you guys, and I think it's that first step of surrender. And it may not be finances for you, it may be something else, but there's gonna be something that you think you have to be in charge of, and you have to do your way, and it doesn't make sense. And when you are ready and surrender that thing to God and say, all right, I'm gonna listen to how you say to do this, then you will experience the freedom and be able to walk in those action steps and see the fruit of it on the other side. And that builds you up for the next thing, because you'd think that was a lot, but there was a next thing. What was that next thing for you, Guthrie? Yeah.
Sorry. I'm really just kind of like these last few weeks. It's just like I feel like we've been go in all this moment. Then I'm like sitting down and soaking in all these feelings and emotions, and it's just hitting me like a train wreck today. So thank you for being patient with me. Yeah. So what was next is I was 2 semesters away from being done with my bachelor's degree before I joined the Navy. And I had with my job, I ended up having a lot of time, so I was able to start doing school again. And my last semester, I needed to complete an internship, and I really didn't know how that was there's no way I was gonna get an internship while being active duty. That's just not happening. And my degree's in emergency management, and there were some different things that I would be able to help out with here that we would be able to kind of work together. And I went to Pastor Jen and Pastor Rick, and they were graciously agreed to let me do my my internship in emergency management at the church. And
Yeah.
yes,
Go
that is
safety
good.
team.
Safety team. But it really started as what seemed like a internship, what seemed like a requirement, what seemed like to get me, to that next step was, it's where I really started hearing God calling into my life that there is so much more here than just an internship. So with that internship, I got invited to do staff retreat. And I got to sit in, and we're just this big planning sessions, and everything's going on, and I said yes to that call, and I said yes to God, and all these different things was just like, and at first I was just like, what in the world is going on? And then everyone else was just like, yes, we see your yes too. And it was a big moment.
I remember that, right? We raised our hand. David was there, like we were all there. And you guys, might ask, why would we have somebody do an internship, unpaid? Well, first of all, if you want to come do an unpaid internship and give us 10 hours a week, we will find somewhere to put you to work. But it was so much more, because we could see the transformation that was taking place in Susan and Guthrie, and in Guthrie in particular, and how he was approaching things. And so, you can come take notes and lead team, but that really means you can come see how the church works. You can come learn all the ins and outs. You can come see the testimonies that maybe everybody out there doesn't see, but we get to see. And seeing him begin to walk in those things, and just watching, providing a place where he might be a little more likely to see him. Can you see him? To see him at work, surrounded by the amazing people on this lead team that walk their faith out so boldly. And so, but in that, we're at the staff retreat, and I think we saw it a day before he said it, and we were like, and then he was like, well, yes, I'm saying yes. And we were like, saying yes to care ministry or saying yes to pastoral clergy care? Like, there's a difference. Like, I see your yes, but I need you to see your yes. And he saw it, which led to a kind of confusing text to Susan.
I get a picture. I don't know how many of you have ever seen a Gen Legacy planning situation, but
It's a brainstorming session.
There's this big piece of white paper, several of them all over the wall. And so all the thoughts had gone onto this paper. And anyhow, so they send me, and it's got words this way, drawings, like everything on it. He sends me a picture of it. I'm at work, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. None. And he calls me, and he's like, I'm being called to ministry. And I was like, excuse me? What kind of ministry? And he was like, well, I was like preaching? And he was like, yeah, I mean, some, but, and I was just like, okay, babe. Because Guthrie, even still to this day, he's a lifelong learner and doer, and he, you know, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, and so yeah.
That's good, darling.
Yeah, and here we are.
Yeah.
And then that same night, I was invited to come
Spouses
up.
get invited to come up for dinner.
And it was the big worship, like a worship session that night after dinner. So, well, I guess before that, that was in July of 23. So in the fall of 22, so November, my mom came to visit for Thanksgiving that year. And she ratted me out and told Shawnee that I grew up singing in the church, and that as a child I had learned to play the piano. And Shawnee said, oh. And fast forward a month to December of that year, and my mom had texted me. She's like, Susan, what do you want for Christmas this year? And I was like, I want a keyboard. I hadn't played the piano since I was a teenager. And I was like, I want a keyboard. I'm going to start playing again. So she bought me a keyboard, and I had no intentions of ever playing it at church. Like, I was just going to, you know, do a little bit on it at home. By this time, I think I had joined worship, just singing, doing vocals maybe. Anyhow, fast forward to July, back to the staff retreat. And that same night, of the day that he had answered his call to ministry, I answered the call to worship ministry and to getting to be mentored by Shawnee, and have learned a lot and grown a lot, and even, you know, played some keys sometimes. So, yeah.
So where did you guys see Jesus in that spot in your life? Like, how did you see him, or where did you see him, or what was different than all the other times you've been in church? Because at this point, you're making some big life changes.
I was just so motivated. Like, I was just like, this is what I want to do. Like, I grew up in the church. Like I said, my parents were always very active in the church. So from a young child, like, I wanted to be active in the church. But then, you know, things happen, whatever. You're working a full-time job, and you're just like, I can't do anything else. But, like, I wanted to. Like, a burning desire. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a calling. When you experience something like that, or there's this, some church people will call it an unction. That's always, it's a really old-fashioned word, but an unction or a calling where there's a burning desire in your heart that you need to say yes to. And so I want to encourage you all, as you sense those things, it may be little things. God will give you a big burning desire to do the littlest things, but be obedient and walk in those things, because the more you do, the faster it happens, the more exciting it gets.
The faster.
Right. Shh, we're not supposed to scare them.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. So then came a turning point for you, Guthrie, because after a staff retreat, Dwight offered to do something called Live Sent with all our leaders, which is walking them through some mentoring and discerning what their call actually is.
Yeah, that was. I said yes, but I would never really knew exactly what is my yes. Like, I know I'm saying yes to a ministry, but I had the opportunity to go through that class with Pastor Dwight and really just kind of walk it out what it is. And I've always from my career as a medic and everything like that, I've always been able to work outside of the ordinary setting of places, work outside of a traditional healthcare facility, like meet people quite literally where they are, and provide care. And I'm used to like that type of role, and like that was a really big thing for me because like I knew I was saying yes, but I felt like I was saying yes to be outside of the traditional four walls of a church and be able to take Jesus wherever I was going. And with my time, it was just with that, it was just chaplaincy. To meet people where they are, and especially in those hard and broken places, and that's where I wanted to be. And that's where it wasn't just me wanting to be there; it was all these different people around me. Yes, we see that too. So,
Yeah. And you mentioned a really important word. Well, I tell you what, we'll get to that word in this next section. So things are looking good. You say yes to Jesus. You say yes to big things, and then crash, right? Pretty much.
big crash. Um, you know, back to the beginning of this, I mentioned that I ran from a lot of things. I ran from a lot of my struggles with alcohol. And at this point, I wasn't drinking all the time. I wasn't as bad as it was, I guess you could say. But it was still pretty bad. And I was still secretly struggling with alcohol. And like, even after becoming a ministry student, even after saying yes to being a chaplain, that's what I want to do. And February of 24, that was a breaking point for me.
Pause you right there for a second.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know this was not a public struggle. We did not know there was a struggle with alcohol, or obviously there would have been some different conversations before he entered into ministry student status. And for all Susan said, I want to commend you, because as you talked and we would, walk and talk, several of us, you never once said what your husband's struggle was. You just said, Guthrie's got some things he's got to work through, and I pray for, and you thought, how do I pray for him? How do I support him as a wife? But you did not tell his business, right? And you supported him and just sought wisdom on how to pray and how to seek. So all of this is going on, and we really don't know, because he's not shown up. Spoiler alert, he was hungover the first day, and I could see he was hungover the first day. But they're military. They just moved here. Like, okay, never saw him hungover again. Never saw any of the signs. So he was really keeping this tight under wraps. And that takes us to here.
Yeah, he had really, and I think some of that too was God was working, so he was trying to clean himself up. But it's hard, y'all. That's hard. And so, it was something that I didn't even, it had gotten to a point where he was largely trying to hide it from me as well at that point. And so the breaking point.
Yeah, I'll let you jump back in. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So I ended up, I went home to Arkansas for a family emergency, and while I was there, I completely, you can fill in the blanks, but whenever Susan went home that month later, she found out about all the things I did. I didn't do anything bad. I didn't get into legal trouble or anything like that, but I lied to Susan, like, to her face, like, and it was a moment that really sank into me. Of all the different times ever, it sank in to me that day. And I hid a majority of this really well from most folks, and it's not hard for me. It's very hard for me to tell somebody that I'm struggling, and but I knew at that moment I had to do something big. I had to do something. It wasn't even big. I just had to do something And I showed up to Pastor Jen, Pastor Rick's house that night. I was just like, look, here's where I'm at. This is what happened. I self-reported myself to my command for
Counseling and help.
counseling and help, and that was really uncomfortable for me because I didn't have to do that.
Right.
I didn't have to do any of that, but it was very important for me to do that because I built up so many different levels of accountability around me. And I built relationships with people. Like, my breaking point was really one of the most transformational parts of my whole journey, because I finally stopped living in fear. I finally stopped living, I finally just was living in freedom, knowing that I didn't have to lie about who I was anymore. And I was on the road to healing from that moment. So,
And we really found at that point how we saw Jesus was not only with Jen and Rick. I mean, they were, are there in the crisis, but there have been so many people in our Bridge family that have heard the story, the testimony, and it was never a judgment. There was never a judgment. There was a never, oh, we can't, they can't find out. It was love and support. Love and support.
yeah, it's always been love and support, even in that moment of brokenness, even in that moment where, like, and I'm about to tell on myself, like, everything they could kick me out of the military if they wanted to. And at that point, I was like, if that's what it takes for me to get it, I'm all for it, because at that moment, that's what I needed. And, I got to meet some really extraordinary people with that journey, not even just in Bridge Church, but like, I built a whole network and community of people at work who was struggling with a lot of the same things that I was, that we bonded, we had a connection with each other, and it really, people saw me, but they also saw something else in me as well. It's hard to talk about a lot of my alcohol stuff, because the only person here who has seen that is you. And everyone at work, everyone here saw the recovery aspect of it. They saw the good parts of it. They saw
Sober part.
all the sober parts, and no one really ever saw the bad ones. So, yeah, yeah.
But by sharing your story, people got to see Jesus at work in you, right? They got
sure.
to see Jesus through you, because you did walk in accountability and humility and love, and begin to share your story with others who would think, like, well, they didn't jerk you off the platform and take your microphone away. You were still allowed to pray when you were, what, struggling? Seriously? Yes. Why, yes, because we're all real human beings, and we all have lives, and we all have to walk it out together. So that led to some last big changes. Wow, are you okay with that? Proud of you.
Thank you.
So you guys then, you're applying to chaplaincy program. Susan, like, I remember this conversation, because she was, y'all, when I say she was done with her job, she was done with her job. And they were planning that you were going to work till December or January, like last bill. And she's like, I remember that call. Guthrie talked to me, and the car's paid off sooner. I forget what the last bill was. It the car or something?
I think so.
And
yeah.
I can actually, he told me I could quit 6 weeks earlier than I planned.
And I didn't know what to do.
And she didn't know what to do.
And I was like, but yeah, it was, but that was it. Like, I knew, I had talked to Jen, and, I had been praying both ways. God, what do you want me to do? And when I finally came to the conclusion that it's time, got to leave my job, even though it was earlier, even though we were still wanting to save some money and do a couple things by our plans. I knew. And so I come to the decision that, okay, it's time. I had multiple offers to stay after I gave my notice. And I stood by it, and I was at peace with that. And that allowed me to have a little bit of a break in December going into the holidays. And then we had family coming, and when Guthrie's family got here, that is when his sister, we found out she was sick and she had to go in the hospital. And so because God opened up that time, we were blessed enough to get to bring her back home here. And I was able to take care of her in her last days and to help, make sure that she was comfortable and passed peacefully. So that was truly, a blessing. And then I was also able to help a family member back home in a crisis situation get the help that they needed, just because I was available. When they reached out, I wasn't at work and caught up and doing work things. So
one of the things that we hear a lot as we walk through ministry and walk through life with people is, I felt this little nudge, or I thought I should have done this and I didn't, or I hesitated. And like, you try to tell people that's the Holy Spirit nudging you, like, this may not make sense or whatever, but literally, if you had not given an obedient yes when God said, no, quit your job, this is it, give your notice right now, then you would have struggled. Like, Marcia would have been under hospice care with another hospice nurse instead of at home with Susan and Guthrie. And that obedient yes, we can't see the why in the nudge a lot of times, but the obedient yes to Jesus really makes all the difference in the world.
yeah, absolutely.
So, is there anything that you want to share about that time with Marcia?
No, I think Susan really kind of hit that one, is because, like, she said, I'm going to quit my job, or she quit her job, then it allowed that opportunity for her to take care of Marcia in those moments. And I've been blessed for 27 years of my life to never lose anyone in my immediate family close to me. And that was really hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for everybody, but like, I've never experienced that before. I used to have this really irrational thought whenever I was in like my hardcore drinking days, that if I lost somebody in my immediate family, that's probably what would send me over the limit. That's probably what would just completely take me out. I don't think I'd ever be able to handle it. And in those moments, it never even crossed my mind. It never even was an issue. It never was anything. And like that piece alone is a blessing. And also to be able to be surrounded by people who, like I said in the beginning, wanted to be there, showed up, and really helped us out in a really desperate time.
So before we talk about one last area, what practices, because I hope you guys understand why we did this. We have someone who went from hungover to baptizing, right? Like in 2.5 years, radical transformation from Jesus. And Susan and her walk and their marriage, we've all got to see it grow tremendously. And so their life is the testimony. What habits did you change? I mean, aside from where you spent your money or whatever, what things became a regular places or ways that you saw Jesus, or what did you change? We call them disciplines sometimes. What things did you guys layer into your lives so that you were actually confident you were hearing God's voice or seeing what direction he was taking you?
For me, it's just being really intentional about my time, being really intentional about what I fill my time with, like, and having the relationship and being able to go to God, like, not just when things are bad, but go when things are good, things are bad, and like I got questions about everything. It's the relationship that he wants. He wants your heart in the good, the bad, and everything. And that that's important to me, is making space and being intentional about that space. And we started doing Sabbath. I'd never taken a Sabbath day before, ever. But like, that's something that was really important for us. And just
We
being in the
started
Word.
praying together
Praying together.
regularly. Quiet time was one of the big ones for me, really being in a routine of that, and prayer and in the Word, and groups. We were in couples groups for the first while, and yeah, and just being more aware of, what we're taking in, what are we listening to as far as music, what are we watching on the TV, what are we reading, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned that I know was extra hard, because letting people in is hard, was that accountability. I know you had accountability relationships with Rick and a couple other guys that you said were significant for you, just as you were vulnerable and open and had that godly counsel around you, that you could go to people not just for worldly advice, but for godly advice.
Yeah, for sure. That was, and I'm still, like I said, it's hard for me to let people in. It's not as bad now, but in the beginning, I'm like, it's not good. But I just built up like this group of people who genuinely wanted to be in my life, whether it's Pastor Rick, Joe, David. I know that I could go to those people. And Robert in the background, who's throwing his arms up. But I just have these people that are just, I could go to, and it's not just about, I could go to them for anything. Life advice. I'm struggling with something. I'm happy about something. It's all these people in my corner.
Yeah. So, yeah. So everything isn't always roses and rainbows, though.
Absolutely not. I say that quite often.
Yeah, so I had talked before, you guys heard our struggle with infertility. We were married in 2019. We wanted a family. I think it's important to note here that prior to him coming into my life, I didn't want children of my own. That wasn't a desire that I had. But we got married. We knew we wanted a family. We wanted to get it started because, God can do it, but the clock was ticking. So we weren't taking any precautions. We were actively trying before he went into the military. We didn't have any luck conceiving. And it got to a point where it was a point of contention for us in our marriage. It caused stress, it caused some arguments, hard feelings. And so I had to lay it down and that was before you even joined the military. But at some point I just had to lay it down and let it go and not be too focused on it. But then we got here. And that fall that we got here in 2022, I was walking with you and Jess and just randomly started. So I do this thing when I get nervous and I just start word vomiting. And so I start word vomiting on Jen and Jess about our fertility struggle and issue, and I want to have kids and this, that, and that. And I very clearly heard God tell me that day, pick it back up. We're going to pick it back up. It's time. And that was 2.5 years ago. Right. And so I got
And you are not pregnant now. Let's just be clear. We're not
I'm not pregnant now. No. Okay. So yeah, I got into the fertility clinic at Walter Reed, which was awesome. Big blessing for us. They found out that I had this mass in my uterus. I had the surgery in October of this past year to remove that. They did feel, because it was large and it was blocking everything, that was the problem, and why we hadn't been able to conceive. So I healed from that surgery. Everything went good. And
Over to you.
Over to me. Yeah. So after Marsha passed away in December, and we were back home during that time, and came back, and then, you know, our life at that point was just kind of, it was kind of all over the place. We were out of here for probably 3 or 4 weeks. We were home for a while, and things were just really chaotic. And then the first week of February, I came home one day, and Susan had this box of candy on the thing and a card. I was just like, man, this is really sweet. And then it opened it up, and we found out that Susan was pregnant. And it was such a blessing. It was a miracle. And at that point in our lives, it felt like
we had done all the right things.
like we had done all the right things. And especially we were grieving, but there was so much joy and happiness that was able to come in this moment. And we've never been so happy, and just everything changed.
So much joy and happiness.
So
And
much joy.
I felt like I had found like, when I tell y'all I didn't want kids before, now I was like, and before we did, when we talked about it, we're like, let's have 2. But after we found out that I was pregnant, I'm like, I mean, we could probably do like 3, maybe 4, maybe a litter. Like, I went from being so focused on, I'm a nurse, I worked really hard to get that degree, that's who I am, that's what I'm going to do, to, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. You know, God put that desire in my heart. And, you know, we had transformed and we had done all the things, and I thought, you know, oh, we did all the things right, yay. And then we found out right before our 12-week appointment that we miscarried. And not only did we miscarry, but my body was late to catching up to the game. So in the midst of that grief, and I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So in those moments, whenever we first found out, it's just like we go from being so happy, everything is just like, this is exactly what was supposed to happen, and it was gone in a moment's notice. It was complete devastation. It felt cruel in a lot of ways. It felt like, why are we going from being so happy to just completely shattered?
Yeah.
And in those moments, and we were angry. We were like, why God would you do this to us?
Yeah.
And I'm here to say, like, yes, like, it's okay to question when
God can handle
when everything's go bad. In fact, that's exactly what he wants. Because it was in those moments that, as hard and as cruel as it felt that it was never intentional. God did not punish us.
Right.
God did not, take something from us as a result of something that we did. It was out of our control. But in those moments, God brought us closer together. And even though everything was just completely devastated, me and Susan were close throughout the whole thing. And we still are close, but
You can smack him. It's okay. We'll turn the camera off. For a minute.
but also we were closer to God because of it. Because that's the only answers that we could have, and the only answers that could be provided. Because nothing else. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
we got home at, I don't know, 4, 5 in the morning from the ER and slept a couple hours, and I got up and I didn't know what to do. I was more devastated and hurt than anything I'd ever experienced. But I knew that I needed to talk to God. And I had started this devotional a couple days prior to, and it's a short devotional book. It's got like each day, and it's got a short devotion, and then it's to help you learn to pray, and so it's got the different areas of prayer, and you can write it out. On this day, the verse for my devotional was from Micah 7:8, and it says, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. And though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." And I hung on to that. And I sat and, I didn't want to. I just wanted to lay down and sleep or forget about everything. But I finished doing each day or each section of the prayer part. And I would like to share with you my prayer that I wrote for supplication for myself that day. Hold me tight and don't let me go. O loving Father, give me peace like I've not known. Tend to my womb and my soul. Hold us and baby ever close. In the shadows of our soul, we ask for your presence as above, down here below. And he was just there. It was hard. But when I tell you, if you ask for him to be with you, he'll meet you there, wherever you are. The next day we took off. We needed to get away. We went to Ocean City. I stood at the edge of the ocean, singing, praising, yelling at God, being angry. And I told him, I said, I know I have no right to ask, but I need you to give me a physical, tangible, I need a sign. I need to know that you are with me. And it wasn't immediate, but I knew he would answer. And the next day, we drove out to Assateague Island to see the wild ponies because Guthrie had never been there. It was supposed to be a rainy, cold day. I told Guthrie, like, you need to bring some warmer clothes. You know, it's going to be cold out by the water. It was 70 degrees. The sun was shining, and we saw somewhere between 15 to 20 horses at the island that day. And if you don't know me, I like to be outside. I like the nice weather, and I am an animal lover.
All the animals. Every animal.
And I had been 2 times before out and seen the horses, but not that many, and in large groups and numbers. And we spent several hours out there together that morning, and we left Assateague to head back here, and it clouded up, and it rained for the next 2 days, I think. So I say all that and I share all that because whatever you're struggling with, whatever the problem, the pain, whatever it is, even when you don't know what to say, just go to him. Just go to him.
Yeah.
He'll be there, and he will personally show himself to you when you seek him.
So I know we've gone a little long today, and I appreciate.
Sorry.
No. They're not sorry, and I'm not sorry. So, but we're getting ready to pray over them, and we're getting ready to send them off. And honestly, I didn't think they'd share that part of the story. You know, there was a very close small group of us that knew everything that had happened. But you guys, the freedom that this couple walks in their lives and for their what's next and for their future is so incredible. And it's been a short 2.5 years that they've gone from the brink of divorce and desperation and getting heat off his back by walking into church with his wife to keep her happy, to surrendering everything they've got to God and watching him work as he heads back to, as they head back to Arkansas, and he's going to become a chaplain, but that means getting out of the military and not having all the benefits and not having all the things and leaving this close-knit family. That's one of the things that they have both said is, we're going back, and that's exciting, but also this is where God's done all the things, and God goes with you. He's called you there, and he's gone ahead of you there. So we're going to pray over them and send them off, but don't miss how their freedom paints a picture of freedom in each one of our lives and the possibility of hope in the darkness, light in the darkness, and the possibility of genuine transformation from things you might never think you would never get freed from. And it's showing up in spaces where, and one of the things, Susan, you said to me multiple times was, I'd always showed up for religion, but now there's relationship. And I didn't see Jesus in the religion, but I sure saw Jesus in the relationship. And that's why so much of why you guys have shared your testimony today. And so, is there anything you would say to them out there? Not like they're not 3 feet away and we're not family, but is there anything you would say to anyone, no matter where they're at in their walk?
It's not about religion. So if you only know religion or you don't know how to have that relationship, ask somebody. I grew up in church, y'all heard me say it. And it wasn't until the last several years that I started figuring out what it was about, and what it actually meant to have that relationship.
I would say to be vulnerable. It's whenever you are broken, it's hard to be vulnerable because you've been hurt before. And the moment that I was vulnerable and actually let it all go, I walked in freedom. And but you hit something that was really important. Like, not every day is rainbows and butterflies.
That's right.
There are some really hard days that come along with it. And I would encourage that be a little accountable. Reach out to somebody, be vulnerable, and build that accountability piece. And that's the best advice that I have.
And for you guys, that started with serving on a team and then getting in a group. Like, it's hard to just show up on Sundays and walk through life with people just on a Sunday morning. Yeah. So